We're still talking about renewing the mind, right? We're talking about the subconscious, and then how the devil uses our subconscious to trick us and to lie to us and have us believe in his lies, and how those things affect our relationship with our God, right? Kind of separates us from that because we believe the lies of the devil and not the truth of God. All right, so we need to reprogram our subconscious. I think we're talking about that. So let's go to Philippians 4. Sorry, someone read Philippians 4 and 8, please. What you looking at? Huh? What are you looking at?
Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things.
All right, what is that saying? What is that saying? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? So what is it saying there? Straightforward. So what does that mean? If there's any, that's what it kept saying, right?
Any.
Or whatever is. It depends on what you're reading, which version you're reading. What is that telling us to do?
Keep your mind on the truth.
Keep your mind on the truth. Got a hand back there in the back. Your mind on the truth.
I'm not staying on the narrow path.
Was it stand on the narrow path? All right. Yeah. 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 So what else is it saying? What's it saying? What's got to do with with our subconscious mind? What are we doing?
We're training by focusing on those things that are going to be good and positive for us and ignore the other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. 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 Um, you know, keeping things on your mind that are positive, things that are true, pure, lovely, whatever. Um, and kind of filtering against those lies that are within us, right? So we're trying to reprogram ourselves, trying to, you ever said, all right, look, I'm gonna be in a good mood today, no matter what happens, and for the most part, you are, sometimes, some things get you down, but you say, I'm gonna be nice to so and so today at work or whatever. I'm gonna smile, even if my boss mean, I'm gonna smile, whatever. You kind of tell yourself these things, right? You know, so keep your mind on something pure. So this is the Bible telling you right here. The word is telling you that's what you need to do is concentrate on good things, on lovely things, true things, and it'll keep those lies from surfacing. All right, let's go to Colossians. Just turn right over to Colossians. Uh, the third chapter and 16th verse, probably only about 2 pages from where you just were, probably. Depends on how many words they got per page. Should be about 2 or 3 pages from where you just were. Colossians 3 and 16.
Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, singing with thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is in your heart to God.
Mhm. All right. All right. So what's that telling us? Is that telling us anything? What's it say? What does it say to you? Anyone? Does it say anything to you? It said something about singing, so y'all don't want to talk about that, do you? Y'all don't
Yeah.
like singing.
It's saying that the hymns, the songs, let them stay in your heart. You know how you hear something and you just can't stop singing it because it's just kind of stuck on you?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
saying that let the word in the song, the hymn, the spiritual singing, let them be stuck on you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Because I can speak for me, but usually when you got a song or something stuck in your head, it usually ain't a bad song. It ain't a sad song. You stay stuck on you like that most of the time. It's usually something that you kind of little upbeat about.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Hopefully that is. I know me. Uh, you may hear a commercial or something. Got a little jingle or something, or it could be. Usually they use like a song that used to be on the radio or something. Now it's a jingle commercial. So that'll be in my head all day long. Sometimes, man, I'll be like, oh, 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 Ozempic or whatever. It, it, it is especially with something catchy. But like you say though, if we surround ourselves with with spiritual song, and with the word, we keep that in us, and that's what we hear all day, every day. It, if there's a joyful spiritual song in our hearts, and you hearing that all day, when you see when that boss comes up to you, like I said, you're telling yourself you're gonna smile at the boss, even if they're giving you a whole bunch of work to do or whatever. You got that song in your heart, and you hear it, and that can help you, react better. Mike, you finna say something? I think you can anyway. I don't know.
I was gonna say it's also talking about how we talk to each other too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's the next step. You're right.
If it says
Teach.
as you teach and admonish one another,
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. So need to be encouraging. We need to talk to each other, basically what I'm getting at. So when we see each other here at church, we need to go out the door and at least say something throughout the week.
Yeah,
Not just while we singing and praising God in here. We need to stay in contact out there.
yeah, yeah. How many of you, when you're talking to someone, especially if it's one on one, I don't know, you went to lunch with a coworker or something, or y'all at the water cooler talking, something comes up, and somebody may say something, you may ask them how they doing, and you probably ain't even really asking because you ain't want to hear it, but you asked, and then they say, well, since she asked, I'm going to tell her how I'm doing, and so they decide to just lay that burden on you. Yeah, yeah, my daughter doing this, and my son doing this, my husband, wife, they doing this, and my cousin did this, what, they, like, goodness, I don't know, you know, but that's an opportunity. If you have the word, what does it say? Dwelling richly in you, something like that.
Yeah.
Richly dwelling in you, within you, with wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another. That's an opportunity to talk to them, right? Opportunity to maybe prophesy a little bit, testify a little bit. Uh, you know, an opportunity to give them some comfort. Give them a little hand back there. Teach them a little bit what the word says. You know, the devil. I'm gonna tell you this now. If you don't never have no troubles, ever, ever, there's a reason for that now. Because he already got you. I ain't got to mess with him. I ain't got to mess with her. She already on my side. I'm gonna go try to get somebody else, bring them over here. So and I can't quote the scripture to you, but the word does say that when you have these troubles, God's He's testing you, he's strengthening you for something that's coming. So so you should really thank him for these those situations, because he's preparing you for what's to come. Yes, sir. Got a hand back there.
Yeah, I just want to go back to verse 16 when we talk about admonishing one another in song.
Uh-huh.
What does that do for others when we do that?
I don't know. What does it do? What you think?
So I think what it does for others, it helps, put them in a more lively mood or a more positive mood when we do that.
Yeah.
When we sharing songs with others who may be going through something or feeling down or depressed. So if you start singing a spiritual song, it helps liven up that mood, it help that person move, bringing life back to them
It does.
spiritually.
It does. It does. You ever well, it's like every now and then, on our group meet, somebody will share a video or something, a song. They share a poem or a nice saying, right? I know sometimes, it hits me just right. I said, somebody said, I listen to it. Oh man, I'm glad they sent that song. Hit me just right today. You know, I don't know how they knew I needed to hear this, but I needed to hear it, or I needed to read this, or whatever. So 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 you can do that for others. Like I said, you can share it. A lot of you have social media and all that. The Bible didn't talk about social media, but we can probably use social media for something good. And so you can share songs and share sayings and poems and psalms, and strong spiritual statements to help others. Helping build up others and heal and helping restore others. So, but you can't do it if the word's not in you, if it's not in you, if it's not dwelling in you. And I'm gonna tell you, how many of you feel terrible, maybe you're in a bad mood or whatever, got things going on, and then somebody comes and tells you their problems or their issues, and you give them a positive word. You don't sit there and say, well, I got troubles too, girl. Now you give them a good word, right? And after you do that, did it make you feel better about what was going on? Even though you were telling them something and helping them, you ended up helping yourself too. I've found that to be the case for me, that I may not be having the greatest day or whatever. I very rarely have bad days, to be honest with you. I don't even know what a bad day is really, because I can't complain at all. But sometimes you get down on something or whatever, something that's not going quite right. But when someone else may come to you with something, just just giving them the good word helps, doesn't it? Yes. All right. All right. So, but that's a way of reprogramming ourselves, right? That's a way of, getting our subconscious changed. But so, um, so that means we have to basically train our conscious mind, right? Because it's not in your subconscious yet; it's in your conscious. So you have to train your conscious mind, and and so we've got to create ways to do that. So let's turn to Romans 12:1 and 2.
Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect.
All right, all right. What's that saying? What's that saying to us? Now we're talking about renewing the mind, right? So what is it saying? Don't conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So if somebody's having a bad day, you shouldn't conform to the bad day, right? You got to renew your mind. So you've got to counteract that. Um, Present yourself, your bodies, as a living sacrifice. What does that mean, a living sacrifice? If you're sacrificing, you're dying, right? No. So how you living and dying at the same time? How you be a living sacrifice? What does that mean?
What it means is when it's saying living a holy sacrifice is that you you're putting off those impurities that will prevent you from having fellowship with God. Because of those impurities, you won't be able to have fellowship with God. So we have to present ourselves in a way of holiness by staying pure in His Word and allow for the Holy Spirit to continue to teach us and staying in that pure form so we continue in fellowship with God.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. But if sacrifice means dying, how you living and dying at the same time?
That's what I said, removing the impurities. That's
Remove.
dying.
Ah, see, you got to tie that together. See, removing impurities is dying. How's that? How's removing impurities dying? So when you filter water, you killing the water.
No, it's not dying, it's like literally dying. But it's removing what is bad, like removing the contamination from the water.
Yeah. You're close. You, I mean, you're dead on it, really. But I want, but I, but the living and dying, sister Sims. Oh, I'm sorry. You had the mic too. I'm sorry.
He said about what I think.
I was just gonna say you're putting off that old man, you're letting all that old stuff,
Always talking about old stuff.
putting it on the new,
Yeah,
and letting that.
yeah. So you're dying to your old self, right? You're dying to that old self. That old person that you used to be is dead. You have sacrificed. You're a holy sacrifice. And so you're killing that person that wasn't holy is dead. And as he said, getting rid of the impurities. He dressed it up so eloquently. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was it's kind of like the whole thing, like he was saying with water. If you got water, it takes the shape of whatever you put it in. If
Ah,
you pour it in a bowl, it's the shape of the bowl. If it's in a glass, it's the shape of the glass. So that's conforming. So if you walk into a room and everybody in that room is mad, they got something sitting on their shoulder, and then you go in that room, you ain't supposed to become as the rest of the room is.
mm-hmm. Yeah. You should bring a little bit of light into that darkness, shouldn't you?
Right. If it's a cold room with a lot of negative attitude, you're supposed to be the warm.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Not
then on the flip
conformity.
side, the dying is kind of like I think about it like if you look at animals that whether it's a snake or it's an insect, they reach a certain point where if they don't shed that skin, they can't continue to move and grow. So they have to shed something in order for them to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And in our walk with God, in order for us to move another step closer to Him, we got to shed something.
Okay. All right. All right. And then what is that? Your spiritual service of worship. What is worship? A lot of us think worship is just right here, what we do on Sunday, right? But worship is really the way we live our lives. The way you live your life each and every day, you either worshiping God or you worshiping one God or another God, I guess I'll say. Right? So, we kind of mentioned this, people to be in here and be perfect and walk out the door and they just cussing everything out. They're not worshiping when they're out there, are they? We're supposed to live our lives in that way. Um, um, you know, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship, which is your spiritual service of worship. So, so let's be sure that we're worshiping at all times, y'all, not just when you walk through these doors. We talk about it all the time. We're the church, whether we're here or not, right? The church isn't the building, the church is us. And if that's the case, what are we doing when we're out there? Are we the church when we're out there, outside of these doors? Yes. So we should be worshiping the entire time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's like I said before, worship is a mutual participation with individual application. So if you're not singing when you're outside of church, when you show up worship on Sunday morning, you ain't gonna do it then.
Yeah. When you said that before?
The nursing home.
No, okay. All right. He's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Um, you can't just pick it up and think you're gonna be able to do it if you don't, you know, I don't know. Basketball player got to practice shooting basketball. He just can't show he can't show up at the game I mean, some of them probably try, but Allen Iverson, practice, practice. He's famous for that. Y'all have to look that up. All right, but you got to practice shooting the basketball. You can't just walk out there and start shooting. You know?
Throw a center block.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Now, don't you get no ideas, young Adrian. I dust you off out there now. You just let me know. You just let me know. I, and my khakis and all now. But
Mhm.
but if you don't practice, you know, I watched a Sports Center this morning. Tiger Woods missed a 3.5 foot putt. 3.5 foot. Tiger Woods now.
Yeah.
Now Tiger done made putts from here to outside the door somewhere, uh, over his career. But he's been hurt, he's been injured, he ain't been playing. That was his first time coming back. And he made some good shots too. But he missed a putt that was about this far, 3.5 feet. I guess that's about 3.5 feet. I don't know, maybe that far.
I know you.
Yeah. Oh, it was. But you got to practice. It takes practice to get good. So you can't come in here and then walk out there and be totally different and not practice, not live the life that you're claiming that you are here. You come in here and claim a certain life, and you go out there and live a totally different life. Now, you should be worshiping, and you should be sacrificing. Your old self should be dead by now. Should be should be killing them off. Ain't that something about our old selves now? But they talk about how cats have 9 lives. How many lives our old selves have? We kill them off about every day, don't we? And they come right on back. Boy, they like, dog. you know, and something triggers it. Something triggers it, right? Some Somehow, we thought we had moved past that. Last year, yeah, we had that problem. Last year. Next thing you know, this year's gonna come back. Maybe something, the devil's just waiting for the right time. And somehow that old dead self didn't come back alive. I don't know how, boy. But yeah, they forever come back. Okay, so yeah, so live your life as a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, um, and which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not conform to this world, but be transformed. Right? That's something we've heard and talked about and discussed several times, right?
Mhm.
Um, all right. So that you may prove that the will of God is that which is good and acceptable and perfect. All right, let's go to Luke. Someone please turn to Luke 9 and 23. Luke 9 and 23. Someone read, please.
Then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily. Follow.
Mm. All right, what does that mean? What does that say? What is that saying to us?
It's a daily choice that we have to make to follow Christ. Like it's not I did it this day, I'm good for the next day. You have to choose Christ every day.
Mm-hmm. 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 All right, so how did it say it now? It said, if he wishes to save his life. No, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily. So what does take up his cross mean? Sacrifice. Why does that mean sacrifice?
Still deny yourself.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you go back in those, I guess in those times, that's how they punish people, right? You know, by they had to carry their own cross, like Jesus did. They had to carry their own cross to the location or whatever, and they hung them on crosses. So take up your cross, is a reference to how people were punished. So you have to take up your cross daily. Keep sacrificing.
Thank you. My mama used to make us get our own switch. And she tell us, you better not come back in here with no little switch either. And she wants three of them when she wants you to go get them, so she can put them all family together.
Ooh.
Mm.
Mhm.
She was drawing. She was drawing blood now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Think of three things that you just like to do. And I'm not talking about I like to eat ice cream. I like this type of drink. You know, I'm talking about I like to not talk to my brothers and sisters or like showing Christ about brother. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about.
Okay.
So those are things you like to do. But what Christ is saying is, you want to be where I am. You got to do things that you don't like to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change your mind about yourself.
Yeah.
When my sister is looking, you got that look on her face. I may not come up and say, what's wrong with you? But I may just give her a hug. Or you out at work and they talking about whatever, and you say an encouraging word instead of joining in.
Yeah. Yeah. Those things. So let's go back to the cross. All right. So we've read descriptions of Christ on the cross, right? The nails in his hands and things of that nature. So Jesus was God's son, correct? He had some powers in it. He healed people and fed people and performed miracles, the signs, right? So he could have, when they came to get him, he could have run. He could have gotten away, but he didn't, did he? So do you think he thought it would be painful? You think he knew it would be painful? Physically painful to him, right? Yeah. But yet he still allowed it to happen. Got a hand back there. But so what did he do? So he knew there would be a level of discomfort, so to speak, right? He knew that it's not something that, he just wanted to do, but he knew he had to do it. So he allowed himself to be discomforted, I guess is the word. I don't know what the term is, but to be, placed there and be in pain. So he put his own feelings aside for what God wanted, right? For what God's purpose for him was. How many of us do that? How many of us put what we want and our own comfort levels aside so that we can fulfill the purpose that God has for us? Mike just mentioned seeing someone that needs comforting, you know, and someone you may say, "Well, I'm not a hugger," you know. That's we grew up, we didn't hug in our family or whatever. You have to put yourself, take yourself out of that situation and say, okay, yes, we know you're more comfortable if you're not hugging everybody. But if this person needs a hug, you need to take that discomfort, put yourself in a non-comforting position or whatever, in order to help that other person, so you can fulfill your purpose. Some people don't like to talk about God. Some people don't like to tell people their testimony, where God has brought them from. Well, I don't want everybody to know my business. You know, but if it can help someone, and that's the purpose God has for you, how many of us will sacrifice ourselves, truly die to ourselves, you know, surrender, surrender to God's will so that we can fulfill his purpose. Who does that? Where they do that at? They should be doing it right here, right? All of us should be doing that out there. But do we? Do we? No, I'm not asking you to raise your hand and then, but just think about that. Just think about that. You know, it could be something as simple as when Mike's up here singing, us singing along with him. Well, I'm not a good singer. They used to pick on me when I was young. I couldn't sing. Look, just close your eyes and belt it out. Just let it come on. You know, get yourself out of that comfort zone so you can fulfill the purpose that God put you here for. How many people? I'm just gonna guess that at least somebody who came to this church and visited. Maybe you knew them. Maybe you invited them. Maybe they came with you, or maybe they just happened to come and you knew who they were, and they didn't come back because how many think that some people didn't come back because the singing wasn't good enough? Now we can help that, right? We can help get the singing better. But no, 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 no. We don't want to get out of our comfort zone and sing. We gotta let's think about that. Got a comment here and comment here and comment here, right?
So
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna ask the question: what does your sacrifice says to God? Have you ever asked yourself that? What does your sacrifice says to God, or what does your sacrifice show when it comes to God?
Okay. All right. So we'll ask that question. We'll answer that question. Let's answer this question here, and then we'll talk about that question. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Say, I had a visitor that came and said that she didn't want to come back because uh, she likes to go where they have a choir. So,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
Y'all have a choir.
Yeah, we do.
Same thing.
Well,
Yeah.
Ask you to come to church with us.
we are the choir.
We the choir.
What's the choir like?
Yeah.
I say the choir within is within you.
Mm-hmm.
The church the church is a choir.
Yeah.
And she looked at me. She looked at me and said,
Mm-hmm.
"You ain't got no choir.
Yeah.
I think I want to go."
Yeah. 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 Well, that's some of the stuff that tradition, I guess, that has come about. People think they got to be entertained when they come here. You know, but so of course we don't do that. But yeah. But if you come here and those that are here, if we're singing as a congregation and we're sounding, you know, very good and very melodious, I guess is melodious a word? Is that sound good? I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it, and y'all just let me think it's a good word. Uh, so if we're sounding good, I don't think anybody gonna miss no choir. But when you come here and we're not singing and we're not following the leader, I mean, nobody's, how many of you don't raise your hand, don't point at nobody, but how many of you sit beside somebody or in front of somebody or behind somebody, and how many of you have actually tried to hear them singing and say, I wonder if I can hear them singing? Now, I sit there, I can hear some people back there, and there's some people I can't hear that's back there in that section. There's people in the section here, who's in front of me, so they're singing this way. There's some I can hear, there's some I can't hear, there's some I can hear over here. One or two over here, I can hear one or two back there. You can hear a few, but you can't hear everybody. Some I think just be moving their lips sometimes. The Lord keep blessing me over and over again. That's all they're doing. Let's sing, y'all. Let's sing. I mean, I'm saying, and that's just an example. I'm not saying y'all not singing, but what I'm saying is get out of that comfort zone. You gotta make yourself uncomfortable. Jesus sacrificed. He made himself uncomfortable so that he could carry out God's plan for him, and we need to do the same. Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I asked that question early on. You know, what do we have you ever asked yourself, what does my sacrifice says to God, or my worship sacrifice says to God? Think about the Levitical sacrifices that they did, the worship sacrifices, which was the burnt offering, the peace offering, the grain offering. And what they symbolized was the burnt offering saying, just as I give you this animal for your pleasure, I also give myself as well. Just as with the grain offering, it said, I give you all that I have. Then the peace offering, of course, is me making peace with God and sitting at the table that He has prepared for me, and giving Him thanksgiving because of all that He done for me and all that He will do for me.
hmm So that's what I sacrifice.
So
So,
sacrifice should says to God, I give you all that I am, I give you all that I have, and I'm here to make peace with you.
all right, okay, okay, okay. So, so with that in mind, what are we saying when we don't sing, or we don't speak to someone, or we don't comfort someone that's going through, when we don't, um, you know, okay, let's say this. All right, I love to eat. All right, someone mentioned ice cream. I eat ice cream every now and then, right? So if the Lord required me to eat ice cream to get to heaven, I'd probably get there. All right, because I love ice cream. Now, when I grew up, especially, I didn't like vegetables coming up. All right, my mama didn't make me eat them. Now, eating ice cream was fun to me. It's easy. Oh yeah, I see. Oh yeah, look, I can eat. I can eat. So now the vegetables, if I got to eat vegetables to get into heaven, I don't know, I might be in trouble, huh? But I need, but let's say I do. I'm gonna eat vegetables every meal now because God told me to do so. So now I'm doing something I wasn't comfortable with, something that wasn't easy for me, something that was difficult. Probably was, especially when I was little. I sit there. I used to be the last one in the kitchen eating, and so I wait till everybody leave. I go and put the stuff back in the pot because I ain't want to eat. But I eat more vegetables now because I know I should, and they taste better to me now too. But there are things that we all do that you may be good at, that you may be comfortable with, and you do it, you know? And yes, God appreciates you doing things for him. But how much discomfort? When have you actually sacrificed something? When you do something that you already like to do, that's not much of a sacrifice, is it? So let's think about that. When you consider what you're doing and how you're worshiping, especially when you're out there, there's some things that you may not be comfortable doing. Those are the things, that's how to me, that's more of a sacrifice to God. That's, like go back to the Levitical sacrificial system. You didn't give the lamb that you didn't want. That lamb all mangy, got bugs all, maggots all in the lamb. That's what I'm saying. No, you had to sacrifice your best lamb, right? The fatted calf and all this, right? You know, the one that you, man, boy, I can't wait to eat them steaks. Oh no, 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 that was gonna be sacrifice, right? So you had to give your best to God. So because it had to be something that you wanted, something that you know that's a sacrifice. But when you're just doing things that you love to do anyway, I mean, not saying you're not working for the Lord and doing good, but there should be a sacrifice in there. You know, some things that you may not be comfortable doing. I've heard James Hall say more than once, he didn't want to be no singer, but he was asked to be a singer, right? And lead songs here in his congregation, right? And he's been doing it for some years now, trying his best not to sing like half the time. Always trying to get somebody else to sing for him. Messing with him while he sit back there. But he put himself something that he wasn't comfortable doing, and he's come up here and he's saying, and he has brought joy to some people. I've heard, I believe Sister Vanita said, when she passes away, she wants James Hall to sing at her funeral because she just loves the way he sings. Of course, I immediately question, you sure you're talking about James Hall? But, 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 but he has sacrificed, you know, what was his comfort level, or at least from I think that wasn't within his comfort zone, but to me that is a sacrifice, and so we all need to be doing something like that. We ought to be we've got to put ourselves out there sometimes. Yes, I got a hand back there, right?
Yeah, I want to answer your question about what happens when we don't make those sacrifices. Uh, think about Nadab and Abihu. When they made sacrifices, that they made the sacrifices that they thought was acceptable to God. And what happened to them when they made the sacrifices that they thought was acceptable to God, instead of the sacrifices that God commanded them to do and the way He instructed them to do it. So when
Yeah,
they didn't do it the way God instructed him to do it, well, instructed them to do it, they died.
that's right. That's right.
And so that what happens with us when we don't sacrifice the way God instructed us to do it, we spiritually die.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So when we don't worship, which they were worshiping, right?
Yes, that's worship.
They were worshiping, and so they didn't worship correctly, or they added to it or did a little extra. Well, God wants us to do it this way. We do a little extra. We surely He'll love this, right? So what we talk about worship, right? Worship is what? The way we live our lives is our worship. So if we're out there and we're not worshiping the way God wants us to worship, that means we're not living our lives the way God wants us to live our lives. What are we gonna do?
Spiritually die.
We're gonna die. We're gonna die. All right. And we will eventually yeah. Eventually, when you physically die a little later on, hopefully it's later on. When you physically die, you're gonna be physically, spiritually dead as well. You're not gonna live forever. So yeah. So our sacrifices, our worship needs to be the way God wants it to. So that means we need to live our lives the way God wants us to live our lives. All right. All right. Uh. Okay. Let's go to Proverbs 3. So going back to the Old Testament, Proverbs 3, 5 and 6, verses 5 and 6.
And lean not into your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and ye shall direct your path.
All right. All right. So what is that saying? What is that saying to you all? Trust. That's the first word it says is trust, right? So what does it mean to trust in the Lord? What does that mean? Does that mean perhaps when you take yourself out of that comfort zone and do something that you wouldn't normally do, that guess what? It ain't gonna be as bad as you thought. You know, James Hall, when he got up here to sing for the first time, did everybody laugh at him? Did people quit coming? Well, I don't know. Anybody quit coming to church, James, when you started singing? Ain't nobody stopped coming. You didn't run nobody away. I don't know what your fears were or whatever. Huh? One or two. One or two. They could it was so good they couldn't take it. No, couldn't take it. But but trust. Trust. He called you to do it. You don't think he's gonna help you get through? Nah, nah, nah. I'm gonna sound terrible up there. They're gonna talk about me. They're gonna pick on me. I don't know. I don't know. All right, so trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. Hmm. Your own understanding. So what is your own understanding?
Think you know.
What you think you know. And where do you think you know it? Where is that? Where do you know it at?
In your mind.
Ah, in your mind. And what we talking about doing? Renewing your mind, right? Right, right, right. We're talking about uh, uh, um, retraining our mind, our thoughts. So don't lean on your own understanding. So you know, how do I get my subconscious change and get my conscious mind to think differently so I can train my subconscious? Well, quit trying to think for yourself. Depend on God. Trust Him. Trust Him. Don't lean on what you think you know. I don't know. I mean, that's what it says to me. Does it say anything like that to y'all? Am I way off with it? James Hall, he's about to tell me how wrong I am.
Trying to be quiet.
Just can't do it, King.
This brought up the trust part. Like when I got thrown into leading a song, I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, because I just did what I knew. I didn't know I was gonna be doing this long though.
Let's have to trick you into it, huh? I just do this one or two sentences. We'd be all right after that.
Well, it wasn't even that. He just say, I'm not saying no more, you saying. That was it.
That was it, huh?
And so I just, like I said, I just did what I knew. And I'm all right with it. But now, I think I told y'all this before. When I'm at home, practicing song, my wife goes with me all the time. Jimmy, you sound home. But now when I'm up here, in here, I'm more comfortable in here than I am at home.
Gotcha. So you're supposed to go in the shower and sing, man.
Not all that.
Everybody sound good in the shower, don't they?
If it's just up here, it's a different feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you say, I'm never, when I'm up there, I'm very comfortable. I'm not afraid. No matter who's in the audience, I'm very comfortable when I'm up there. Even when I'm not up there singing, like when I be standing at the door, I have trouble standing at that door when I'm on the door there singing. But when I'm up there, it's just
Mm.
it's easy. But again, like I say, it's that trust part. You just like you say, do it. You
You're getting out of your own way.
don't put nothing else in it. Don't you know just do it. We got plenty of examples.
Yeah.
Just like with Abraham, he said, "Go."
Yeah, you went.
We went.
Yeah, yeah. All right. All right.
So a lot of times we get in the way because what we start doing, we start doubting God. And we start doubting God, the things start happening. Yeah. Like, okay, what is coming?
Yeah.
Well, you remember God said do this, but you said I'm gonna do this.
Mm-hmm. I know I'm supposed to do this right here, but I'm going, instead of going right, I'm going left. Yeah. 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 All right. So we have to retrain, in order to renew our mind, renew that, we have to renew the lies and quit listening to those lies that are in our subconscious. So we have to take our conscious mind in order to retrain our subconscious, and that's what we're working on. So, so these things that these verses tell us who we should listen to instead of listening to our own, what we think we know, and live our lives as a living sacrifice. All right. So we'll stay in this a little bit, and we'll keep talking about daily surrender and taking your thoughts captive. Well, we'll finish up on Sunday, so we'll cover a lot of that, and you know, new patterns in your life, creating new patterns. You know, there's some things that you do right now that you didn't used to do 10 years ago, but now it's a habit. I don't know what it is. Could be the way you chew gum, could be the way you drive, could be whatever. It wasn't a habit the first time you did it, but you've done it enough now that it's become a habit, right? That's the way we need to be living our lives when we're sacrificing and worshiping, living our life in a worshipful way for God. There are things we have to train ourselves to do, and it takes a while. It takes a while so that you don't have to think about it. All right, anyway, we'll keep discussing that. All right, as everybody comes back in, anybody else got any comments, questions?